You know that feeling, right? You walk into a room and poof, you have absolutely no idea why you're there. Or maybe a familiar name is right on the tip of your tongue, but it just won't come out. It's so easy to just shrug and say, well, I'm just getting older. But what if that's not the whole story? What if it's something else entirely? Let's get into it.
I mean, what if that brain fog you're feeling has less to do with the number of candles on your birthday cake and a whole lot more to do with the number of pills in your medicine cabinet? That's the really big question we're going to tackle today.
And get this, because this is a huge deal. An estimated 89% of American seniors are taking at least one prescription drug. 89%. So, this isn't some rare niche problem. This is something that touches almost all of us, whether it's you, your parents, or your grandparents. And here's the real kicker, and honestly, it's the most important thing we're going to talk about. What if some of that forgetfulness isn't a life sentence, not an irreversible diagnosis, but just a side effect? And a side effect that, in a lot of cases, can actually be reversed. Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we've got to peek under the hood a little bit and look at some basic brain chemistry. Trust me, understanding the why behind all this is the first step to feeling like you're back in the driver's seat. All right, let's talk about a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. Now, that's a mouthful, I know, but just think of it like the brain's postal service. It's the messenger that carries signals for learning, for memory, for focus. It's absolutely critical for, making new memories and just feeling sharp. So, where do the medications come in? Well, imagine this. Some of these common drugs act like a dimmer switch for that brain messenger we just talked about. They don't totally shut it down, but they dial it way back. And when that signal is dimmed, it's harder for your brain to operate at 100%. And yeah, there's a fancy medical term for this dimmer switch action. It's called the anticholinergic effect. It pretty much means what it sounds like, anti, or against, acetylcholine. And you'll want to remember that term because it's the key that unlocks this whole puzzle. It's the how behind these memory issues. So, which drugs are we talking about here? Which ones have this anticholinergic or dimmer switch effect? Well, this is where it gets really interesting because some of the biggest offenders are probably sitting in your bathroom cabinet as we speak. And we're going to start with one that might honestly shock you. I'm talking about simple, over-the-counter sleep aids. The ones you can grab off any pharmacy shelf. They seem so harmless, right? But they're hiding a pretty significant risk. So if you look at the box for things like Tylenol PM or Advil PM, you'll see the active ingredient is often something called diphenhydramine. And guess what? That's the exact same stuff that's in Benadryl. So yeah, pretty much any time you reach for one of those PM or nighttime formulas for a cold or to get some sleep, you're taking a pill with a really strong anticholinergic effect. And look, the long-term effects of using this stuff regularly, they're pretty sobering. A big study showed that seniors who frequently use these kinds of drugs had a 54% higher risk of dementia. Let that sink in. That's not a tiny little blip on the radar. That's a huge measurable risk factor, and it's tied to something we all think of as totally safe. Okay, moving on. Next on our list is another one that millions and millions of people take every single day, meds for heartburn and acid reflux. We're talking specifically about a class of drugs called proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs for short. And the research here is, wow, it's pretty startling. A study in JAMA Neurology found that people who regularly used PPIs, think Prilosec, think Nexium, had a 44% increased risk of dementia. And the thinking is, by shutting down stomach acid so much, these drugs might actually mess with your body's ability to soak up vital nutrients like vitamin B12, which of course your brain absolutely needs to function. And believe me, the list doesn't stop there. It's actually way longer than you'd probably guess. For instance, certain drugs for bladder control, they're linked to a 49% higher risk of dementia. How about common anti-anxiety meds like Xanax or Valium? A 51% increased risk for Alzheimer's. And some antipsychotics, a massive 71% acceleration in cognitive decline. So the main point here isn't to scare you, but to show you this isn't about one or two rogue pills. It's a really widespread issue across a whole bunch of common medications. But, and this is a really big but, this is where the danger can really, truly multiply. See, the biggest risk often isn't from just one single pill. It's from the combination of them. It's what we call the stacking effect. Again, there's a technical term for it, anticholinergic polypharmacy. It sounds complicated, but all it really means is that each one of these dimmer switch pills adds to a total cognitive burden on your brain. Think of it like this. One pill might be like carrying a small stone in your pocket, but add a second, then a third, pretty soon that weight becomes absolutely crushing.
Let me tell you a quick story about a woman named Margaret to show you what this looks like in real life. So she was taking a pill to help her sleep. Then she added one for bladder control. And on top of that, another for her acid reflux. 3 common pills. Her family started noticing she was getting really confused, really forgetful. And of course, they feared the worst. They thought it had to be Alzheimer's. But it wasn't. The real problem was the combined effect of all those medications. And when her doctor figured it out and adjusted her prescriptions, her memory, her personality, it all started coming back.
And Margaret's story is far from a one-off. A huge study, I'm talking over 280,000 older adults, found that the people with the highest anticholinergic burden, from stacking these drugs, had a 120% increased risk of dementia. That's not a typo. That is more than double the risk. That right there, that's the devastating power of this stacking effect. Okay, so we've laid out the problem, and I know it sounds pretty heavy. It is serious, but now we're at the most important part of this whole conversation, what you can actually do about it. Let's pivot from the problem to the action plan. And please, hear this. This is the single most hopeful piece of news in all of this. Medication-induced cognitive issues are often completely reversible. This isn't always permanent damage. With the right information and the right actions, these symptoms can get better. Your brain has an amazing ability to bounce back. So what does that look like? Here's a super simple 3-step action plan. Step 1, make a list. And I mean a list of everything you take. Your prescriptions, sure, but also your vitamins, your supplements, and especially those over-the-counter sleep aids. Step 2, book a dedicated appointment with your doctor or pharmacist just to talk about that list. Don't try to cram it into a 5-minute slot at the end of a regular visit. And finally, step 3, ask one simple, direct question. Could any of these be affecting my memory, and are there safer options for me? That's it. It's all about giving yourself the power to start that conversation.
And that really brings us right to the final question. Look, this is absolutely not about telling you to throw out your medications or to stop trusting your doctor. Not at all. This is about being an active partner in your own healthcare. It's about being informed. It's about asking the right questions to protect the most valuable thing you own, your mind. So the only question left is, isn't it time your medicine cabinet got a cognitive safety review?